This was looking like, you know, I'm trying to think of the appropriate metaphor. This was looking like the Blitzkrieg. It was going to be all over in a few weeks, and Mrs May was going to be victorious. But instead, Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party have put up much more of a fight than anybody was anticipating. They may have even surprised themselves, to be quite frank.
We will be investing in those companies and investing in that infrastructure, so we have a sustainable growing economy.
Mrs May's personal ratings have fallen very, very sharply, and to be honest, we haven't seen anything quite like it before. And I think the simple fact is that her style is quite measured, she's quite controlling, she has a small group of people that she works with and she trusts. On contact with the voters, things haven't gone very well, quite frankly, and some of her interviews have not been good. The manifesto that she launched was not particularly strong. She, isn't willing to debate, and I think, what people are seeing is perhaps not quite what they were expecting.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ruby. Thank you. Thanks, Karen. Thank you very much for that wonderful Stoke-on-Trent and North Staffordshire welcome, everybody. And
the vote between older people and young people is still very polarised, of older people tending to support the Conservatives and the young becoming enthused about Jeremy Corbyn. And of course there are many aspects, free tuition fees, what's not to like? There's a lot of parts of the Labour manifesto that do appeal very strongly to lots of people. Ultimately, though, of course, it comes down to competence, and on that, despite Mrs May's fall in the polls, she's still 15 percentage points ahead of Mr Corbyn in terms of being seen as the person who's best to become Prime Minister, which incidentally, of course, is similar to the difference between Mr Cameron and Mr Miliband before the 2015 general election. At the start of the campaign, Brexit dominated. It's still seen as one of the top 3 issues, but interestingly, the National Health Service is rising in importance, and so has education. And so the state of public services, austerity, the debate has moved. Mrs May wants to bring it back to Brexit, but of course she had her own unforced error over social care, over looking after older people with her dementia tax, so-called. So yes, she wants it to be about foreign affairs, about Brexit and strong and stable leadership and all of that. But actually on domestic policy, she hasn't performed as strongly. What's looking likely in Scotland is that the SNP will remain the majority party, but it does look like the Conservatives will pick up some seats. They're polling ahead of Labour in Scotland, and so Mrs May may actually bizarrely be more pleased about her performance in Scotland possibly than in some other regions of Britain like Wales. Polls as a whole are certainly in pretty good health, quite frankly. My colleagues in France, my colleagues in the Netherlands have just had 2 very accurate elections. And we try and learn every single time about what we can do to make things more accurate. But if there is an element of judgment involved, we should be more open about that. But nevertheless, I think even after recent events, I think the polling industry will be very, very surprised if Mrs May does not end up as Prime Minister.